Our next department is the Department of Transportation. Assisting on stage is Caltrans Director Malcolm Doherty. A citation for a heroic service performed by Dave Ackley, Caltrans Equipment Operator 1, and Dane Hartman, Caltrans Equipment Operator 1. On February 2nd, 2012, around noon, California Department of Transportation Equipment Operators Dane Hartman and Dave Ackley were working on a rural section of Highway 36 in Humboldt County near the Dinsmore Airport when they noticed a small airplane on the horizon rocking back and forth, heading towards the airport's landing strip. As they watched, the airplane crossed the highway and touched down on the landing strip, bounced, went halfway down the runway, and then bounced again. The plane then started to climb, but suddenly nosedived past the end of the runway and crashed on a grassy patch near the highway. Mr. Ackley and Mr. Hartman tried to radio for emergency services, but there was no signal at that time in the area. They quickly hopped over the airport fence and found a student pilot who had been thrown from the plane seconds before the crash. The flight instructor was still in the cockpit, badly injured. The student pilot called 911 from his cell phone, but was in such a state of shock that he handed the phone to Mr. Ackley. Suddenly, the front of the airplane was on fire. The student pilot and Mr. Ackley pulled the wounded flight instructor from the cockpit, while Mr. Hartman sprayed the airplane with a fire extinguisher. The flames grew higher, and when they reached the wings where the fuel is stored, the airplane exploded, sending a giant fireball into the sky higher than nearby power lines. The wind blew the flames, and the men moved the wounded flight instructor farther away as the surrounding grass began to catch fire. Luckily, help soon arrived to administer first aid and extinguish the grass fire. With no regard for their own safety, equipment operators Dane Hartman and Dave Ackley's heroic service saved the lives of a student pilot and a flight instructor when their airplane crashed. The state of California takes great pride in presenting these silver medals of valor to Equipment Operator 1, Dave Ackley, and now Equipment Operator 2, Dane Hartman. Citation for a heroic act performed by Stephen Hallan, Senior Caltrans photographer. On December 16, 2014, at approximately 1:15 p.m., California Department of Transportation Senior Caltrans photographer Stephen Hallan was on assignment and taking photos of the Amtrak station in Merced. Mr. Hallan was kneeling in front of a train taking photos as it was leaving the station when he noticed a woman running along the platform, frantically trying to board the train as it was pulling away. The woman started banging on the side of the train with her hand, but the train continued forward. Suddenly, the woman lost her footing and fell between the platform and the moving train. Seeing the woman fall, Mr. Hallan dropped his camera and, without hesitation, sprinted over to where she was lying on the tracks. Sliding down the tracks on his backside, Mr. Hallan placed his arms under her arms, lurched backwards with all his might, and pulled the woman free just seconds before the wheels of the train rolled over the spot where her legs had been. With no regard for his own safety, senior photographer Stephen Hallan's heroic act saved a woman from an oncoming train. The state of California takes great pride in presenting this Gold Medal of Valor to senior Caltrans photographer Stephen Hallan. Citation for heroic service performed by Mark E. Johnson, Caltrans Equipment Operator 2. On June 22, 2015, at approximately 9:53 a.m., California Department of Transportation Equipment Operator 2, Mark E. Johnson, was driving a skip loader tractor along the Antelope Freeway near Agua Dulce when he felt a strong jolt from the back of his tractor and realized he had just been rear-ended. Mr. Johnson shut his vehicle down. When he turned to assess the impact, he saw the car that hit him was on fire and filled with black smoke. The driver was struggling to escape the burning vehicle, but the car was badly damaged and the door was jammed. Without hesitation, Mr. Johnson ran to the flaming car and pried the door open with his bare hands. He then led the dazed driver, a pregnant woman who had fallen asleep at the wheel, away from the burning vehicle. After confirming she was safe, Mr. Johnson turned his attention to the grass fire started by the flame-engulfed car. Using a shovel, he started to extinguish the fire before additional emergency personnel arrived. Both Mr. Johnson and the driver were transported to the hospital for observation. With no regard for his own safety, equipment operator Mark E. Johnson's heroic service saved a pregnant driver when her vehicle caught fire after a collision. The state of California takes great pride in presenting this Silver Medal of Valor to Caltrans Equipment Operator 2, Mark E. Johnson. Thank you, Director Doherty, Secretary Bosler.